Welcome back to the Bulldog broadcast on the Field of 68 Media Network. Today's supporting sponsor, McGilvery Environmental. Appreciate the support. And you need any construction services done, North Idaho, Eastern Washington, look up McGilvery Environmental. Website is below, as well as a more in-depth description of the work that they provide. So thank you to McGilvery Environmental. Well, moving right into the season, Gonzaga now sitting at 3-0. Clearly, we've talked about the Baylor game. Excuse me. We've talked about the Arizona State game. Those were good wins. In particular, that Baylor win. That Arizona State game is probably going to look better as the season goes on than a lot of people expected when they initially saw that on the schedule and then saw the result being that it was so close. It was a 6-8 point game. But with Gonzaga having a big one on the road, first true road game of the year, in a very difficult environment, Viejas Arena against a really good San Diego State team, had a game Friday night could have easily overlooked, and that is UMass Lowell. UMass Lowell came into the game sitting Ken Palm right around 115, which is surprising because America East is not a great conference, but Vermont has really been good out of that conference historically the last 10 years or so. UMBC actually, when they knocked off Virginia, when that first 16 versus 1 matchup in the NCAA tournament, UMBC is in that league. So there are some good teams in that league. There's just very little media attention paid to it. But that being said, you look at the Ken Palm of 120-ish, as I mentioned, that's falls right around middle of the pack in the WCC. So this will end up being a better than a lot of people expected win at the end of the year. Because if you look at Portland, if you're looking at San Diego, if you're looking at Pacific right now, all of those schools, their Ken Palm numbers are 250 or worse. I believe Portland is around 310 as we speak. So kind of a game that gave the coaches some concern coming in because America East is a better conference, as mentioned, than they get their credit for. But it was a very experienced basketball team. 10 seniors on that basketball team. They had 4 returning starters from a season ago. They moved their leading scorer, Quentin Mincy, from the bench, where he was sixth man of the year a year ago in the league, to a starter. And they came in, shooting the ball really well. Great action, some continuity ball screens, some split actions, posting the right guys. But at the end of the day, they just didn't have the size to kind of take advantage of a lot of the things that they're able to do during the course of their normal scheduling of games. But what I liked from Gonzaga was there wasn't a lot of slippage from first group, and Michael Ajayi started in place of Ben Gregg on Friday. And I wouldn't be surprised if the starting lineup changes at times throughout the year. But Michael Ajayi started in place of Ben Gregg that night. There was very little slippage, even when you got 10 minutes left in the game. There was a point where Khalif Battle was running the point. You had June on a wing. I think you had Dusty on a wing as well. And then you had Diani, the big fella, as one of the posts. So lots of guys got some minutes. Lots of guys got some experience. Everybody pitched in. I think one of the things that was great is Battle continues to show and kind of demonstrate why he was so valued by Gonzaga in that transfer portal, because he can score buckets in a hurry. Had another fantastic dunk out in transition when he got the deflection and steal, but his ability to decisively catch and shoot, and I say that because some guys are catch and shoot guys and some guys are just hunting catch and shoot opportunities. I think he does a really good job of hunting catch and shoot opportunities by getting the vision of a guy like Nembhard, which is a terrific combination because Nembhard's such a good passer, as well as Hickman. And then when you have the post players who command a double like EK, like Huff, and that are willing and good passers, you're really creating chances for yourself. So I'm liking that about Battle, but I'm also liking his ability to create off the dribble. He's been really decisive in regards to that. And I think as the season goes on and Gonzaga plays uh, even more competitive games, I think what you're going to see is down the stretch, more times than not, I think in a close game, he's the guy that Gonzaga is going to go to in different situations. So great stuff there. The one concern I have after this game is Ryan Nemhard looked in that second half to have banged, I believe it was his left thumb. He had a little wrap on it. When he injured it. But then he went out and then he came back to the bench with a little bit more heavy of a tape job on that left thumb. So something just to keep an eye on. Obviously, in a close game, I'm sure he would have came back in, but no need to, risk anything at this point of the season. But now we have a first test for Gonzaga in regards to a competitive opponent on the road. First three games here in Spokane. Granted, Baylor was a neutral, semi-neutral, being at the Spokane Arena, but you go on the road to San Diego State at Viejas Arena. In my eyes, Gonzaga, McCarthy Athletic Center, SDSU, Viejas, those are the two best atmospheres for college basketball on the West Coast. Now I know Arizona can lay claim to being in there, and rightfully so. I just haven't been to a game in Arizona in a long time, so I'm not sure what their current environment is, but Viejas is tremendous. It's a really good gym. The student section gets after it. They call themselves the Show, just like Gonzaga's Kennel Club is called the Kennel. So they do a really good job. But this team for San Diego State is much different than the last few years. 2 years ago, they made the Final Four. Last year, they made the Sweet 16. But they've got to replace two big time players and then another really good supporting role player. Actually, two supporting good role players. Lamont Butler, big time point guard over the course of his career at San Diego State, now at Kentucky, but he was an unbelievable defender, maybe the best on ball defender in college basketball on the perimeter the last couple of years. He is gone. Jaden Ledee led him in scoring and rebounding last year. I mean, his numbers were monstrous last year. So they got to replace that on the interior. And they're doing it with a couple guys like Jared Coleman-Jones, Magoon Guath, Miles Heide is improving, but he hasn't shown it just yet with his numbers this year. Darion Trammell was a good guard the last couple of years. He is gone. And then Micah Parrish is gone as well, transferred to Ohio State. But they still have some great pieces. And a lot of the reasons why is because they do a really good job of recruiting in the portal as well as developing from within. And I think that's the biggest one right there we can see is the developing of from within. Miles Bird, you might remember the name last year. He had a good game against Gonzaga and Spokane, which is one of the reasons I think the Aztecs pulled that win out. He and Reese Waters last year were good. But Miles Bird's off to a tremendous start, lefty wing with good size, really versatile, great defender. The interesting thing here is he sprained his ankle in practice last week, and so he is game time decision is the last that I read. So that will definitely impact the game a little bit. Reese Waters is out with injury. He's supposed to be out another couple weeks. That's a big hit because big, strong guard can shoot it, can defend. That will be important for San Diego State to get him back. Then you look at a couple of the newcomers, at least to playing this year. Nick Boyd transfers from Florida Atlantic. He's played in a Final Four. Lefty, great passer, great shooter. As he gets up to speed with SDSU and what they like to do, he's going to be an impact player in that Mountain West. Magoon Guath is an interesting player, about 6'10", 6'11", very long. He redshirted a season ago, and he could be the next high-level NBA prospect, excuse me, out of San Diego State, and at least in regards to conversations that I had with their staff last year and how they see his projected development going. BJ Davis is a good story. He's been at San Diego State for a couple of years, bide his time behind Butler, Trammell, and others, and now he's making the most of it, averaging almost 14 a game early this season. You can just tell when you watch game film, his confidence has grown. Physically, he does look a little bit bigger, a little bit more explosive, maybe. So he's doing a nice job of attacking his development. But what I look to see in this game is you have to handle the environment of Viejas, which is fueled by the intensity of how San Diego State plays on that defensive end of the floor and on the glass. So they're many times they're going to pick you up full. It's more of a man. Occasionally, a big may come in and run and jump and try to get the ball out of a primary ball handler's hands, but they're going to pick up. They're going to pressure. They're not going to allow anything easy in the half court. They'll deny a lot of times on the wings. If they're not in full denial and they catch, everybody's in full help in gaps. They do an unbelievable job of making you feel the pressure and pushing out the catches. The cutters have to go behind. They're going to push the pick and rolls out. They're going to be physical with it, getting over the top. On the post, on the post, they do a really good job of pushing that catch off the block. And they don't do it all the time, but a lot of times they will double the post. And they'll double it in different ways, but a lot of times they're going to double big to big on the low side. And so Gonzaga, I would imagine, because of EK and Huff's scoring abilities, got to be ready for that, make the right decision. This is a unique game for EK because he's never beat San Diego State in the time that he played at at Wyoming. So he's played them a number of times. He's been in this environment, and he's excited and ready to kind of have that challenge being with Gonzaga and taking this on. But those are the things that San Diego State does on the defensive end of the floor. On the offensive end, they're pretty simple. They do a really good job of their coaching staff of, if you play with heart, passion, and intensity on the defensive end of the floor, we're going to let you play with some freedom on the offensive end of the floor. So if they get a quick turnover, they're going to push in transition. They don't push after made baskets like other teams like Gonzaga. That's not how they're built. But after a turnover, they will get out in transition, and guys will have freedom to get to the rim. They'll have freedom to shoot transition threes if that fits their skill set. But then in the half court, they do a lot of dribble handoff actions. They do a lot of high pick and rolls. They do a lot of actions to get bigs in spots where they've got a seal, whether it's a duck in from the short corner to the block or different angles. But they'll look to post in different ways from the wing, and then a lot of high-low actions, big to big. But all in all, a much more simple offensive attack for San Diego State than for Gonzaga. But that doesn't mean they're not efficient. You look at some of their teams last year. If you look at the team last year, they were pretty simple offensively because they had such a good player in Jaden Ledee. Get him the ball, get out of the way. And I think, that's one of the things Brian Dutcher is really good at, is understanding what his team is and how they need to play to be put in a position to be most successful. You don't have to run all these 6-7 different actions if you just need to get the ball there where that advantage is. And so I think that's why when I say they're a little more simple than a lot of teams on the offensive end of the floor, it's also because they understand it and they want to quickly take advantage of it. So, again, great atmosphere. Gonzaga's got to be prepared for a really tough-nosed, physical San Diego State team that is still trying to figure out their identity. Missing piece in Reese Waters with an injury, questionable piece with Miles Bird if he's going to play. If he doesn't, that's obviously advantage Gonzaga. But San Diego State's got enough pieces to make this a very interesting and unique game. And I don't think if Gonzaga wins, I don't think they're going to be running away with it in any way, shape, or form, because San Diego State is that good of a program, even though we don't know as much about these guys as maybe we knew about the guys a year ago. They're going to compete, they're going to play hard, and they're going to play with a lot of pride, which is what San Diego State's program has been built on all these years. So coming up, end of the episode, we've got 2 interviews: Gonzaga assistant Brian Michaelson, as well as San Diego State assistant coach David Velasquez breaking down a little bit more their roster, how they want to play, and how they need to prepare to go up against Gonzaga. So thanks for listening. Don't forget, supporting sponsor, McGilvery Environmental. Check them out if you need any help. Thank you to our presenting sponsors. If you have interest in joining the Bulldog broadcast, the Field of 68 Media Network, for being a sponsor, don't hesitate to reach out to me, Dan Dickau, at hotmail.com. Presenting sponsor, McGilvery Environmental can handle any of your construction needs, specializing in new construction, repairs, residential and commercial asphalt paving, excavation, environmental remediation, and hazardous waste. Reach out to Kip McGilvery at McGilvery Environmental today at 208-556-6384 for your free estimate. Field of 68 Media Network, Bulldog Broadcast, Dan Dickau continues on with some great guests on this episode. Assistant coach for the Zags, Brian Michaelson. Appreciate you joining, Brian. Just want to get right into it. First week, you guys tested yourselves against Baylor and a much surprising Arizona State team after they kind of started the season with a struggle against Idaho State. What are your biggest takeaways as a staff early on in this season?
It was a great week, obviously, to go 2-0, and we had two great atmospheres that game at the arena against Baylor. I thought the energy was incredible. The community did a great job, and then coming back here, the ASU game was a great home crowd. So to start off the year like that was really important. I think what we took away was a little bit of inconsistency. I mean, I think the Baylor game we were pretty darn good. We were good on both ends of the floor. We executed like we wanted to. We were really tight with the game plan, and I think ASU had long stretches of that and long stretches of not being as consistent. So I think it definitely showed us what we can be, but the importance of trying to find that day in and day out, but for the entire game, like we're able to do with Baylor.
How do you as a staff kind of work on, taking those stretches of being really good and getting guys to understand, hey, if we can extend these stretches of really good, regardless of rotations, substitute patterns, to understand the value of the attention to details that it takes to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you talk to them about it, you work on it at practice a little bit. I think film is a great teacher, and again, we had so many good stretches in those two games that we were able to show a lot of, hey, this is what it looks like, and then to clip a couple of the possessions that weren't and say this doesn't look like those. Let's remind ourselves and let's remember what makes us look like this on both ends of the floor, and then got to go out and find a way to do that every day.
Coach Few, after that Arizona State game in particular, excuse me, was making comments like, hey, Ryan Nemhart needs some more attention on the national stage with the numbers that he's putting up. Through at least the first two games, Baylor, Arizona State, 22 assists, two turnovers. And we're talking about a player who's put in a lot of decision-making opportunities. And to have those kind of numbers, as a former point guard myself, those are mind-boggling numbers because at some point you're going to throw a pass off target. At some point, the defense is going to make a great play. At some point, you're going to make a poor decision. But he seems to make the right decision nearly every time down the floor.
Yeah, he's special. It's a gift that family can really pass the ball. Obviously, unbelievable IQ. But like you said, the split second decisions that he can make with the pace that he plays at, and some of those windows he puts the ball in. You go back watching the first week offensively, and you talked about the 22 assists, some of those windows that he hit against both Baylor and Arizona State, different coverages from both teams, and the type of shots that he was able to get other guys is spectacular. So obviously the assist to turnover ratio is special. I think it's obviously super early, but leading the country in assists right now. And it's not just that, it's the pace that he allows us to play at. He's making those at fast pace, high possession games. And then obviously, the way he's shooting the ball, he made a bunch of free throws against ASU. He made some key ones late, and he's shooting 60% on the year from three. So again, early, but our offense has been clicking in a high way against two high level good opponents that are going to have good seasons. And obviously Ryan's the catalyst for all that.
He's kind of continuing on what he did down that second half of last season. But what I think I've liked is there's been growth in Dusty Stromer and Braden Huff. You always talk about, you want to see progress from year one to year two in regards to playing in games for Huff in particular. But those guys, Huff obviously clearly has scored the ball at a high level, but I think his defensive activity and his success on that end of the floor has been great. And I think Stromer is shooting it with a ton of confidence right now. And defensively, he might be your most consistent as far as keeping guys in front from what I've seen. What are you guys seeing in the growth of those two?
Oh, super happy with those two. I think, you mentioned what did we find the first week, and I probably was remiss to not mention the success of the bench is one thing we found. Our bench production was massively important both games, and Dusty and Mike and B Huff were all huge parts of that. But you touched on it, the confidence that Dusty's shooting with. He does have a gift moving his feet at his size that's really important to us. And I think both games he had some strong takes to the basket that were growth over last year. So huge growth from him, a huge piece of what we're doing, and really happy with the jump he's taken. And we need him to continue to take from year one to year two. And, B Huff has a gift for scoring, but I think the fact he did it back to back against, top 100 teams, the fact that he did it down the stretch of that ASU game, he made huge shots and he made them in different ways, ball screen, roll, drive, continues to show his progression in terms of his skill set, but also in terms of his physicality and his confidence. And then I do agree the defensive end has continued to grow. He's gotten tougher. He's gotten more athletic. I think he has a better understanding of what we've doing. I've been really happy with some of his contests in the first two games. So he's a great kid. He understands what he needs to do to get better, and I think he is, heard that message and has worked on it. And we're starting to see some of that in the games. But those two are massively important to this team, to this program. And again, Mike, off the bench in those first two games, those three were awesome together.
Well, it's no secret you guys will always schedule as difficult as you can, and maybe the most difficult game on the West Coast for any opponent is going to play at Gonzaga in the McCarthy Athletic Center. The second most, or maybe 1A, 1B, would be going and playing San Diego State and Viejas. Monday night, big time matchup, CBS Sports Network. I'll be lucky enough to be on the call for that network. What do you guys expect as an environment? I know they beat you guys at home last year. You guys went down there maybe 5, 6 years ago. They had a really good team with Jaden McDaniels and Matt Mitchell that they won that game as well. But how do you prepare your guys to be in the environment where they're the ones walking into it as opposed to embracing it as a home crowd?
Yeah, I think anytime you go for your first road game, it's going to be different, and wondering how the group will respond is always a question mark as a coaching staff. And then, like you said, walking into one of the very best buildings in college basketball, especially in the West, and with what that program has done, just the level of respect that we have for that program, their consistency, how they win. We're going to have our hands full, and it's going to be a lot of adversity, and seeing how we respond to that adversity as a group is going to be important. I think that's where you hope that a veteran group like this has been through it. And obviously Ryan and Nolan and Ben and Graham have played a ton of minutes here. Graham and Ryan specifically at other places. They've been in tough home environments. Graham's actually played there before at San Diego State. KB's played an SEC schedule. You hope that those veterans kind of come through and give you a sense of calmness, and that we can stem some of the adversity that obviously San Diego State's going to bring on the floor, and that arena is going to bring as well. So it'll be a great game. It's awesome for college basketball. It's awesome for college basketball in the West, but we know we got our hands full, and we have so much respect for their program, and just especially the way they are on the defensive end.
They have eight newcomers that they're essentially trying to figure out roles and rotations with. Lost their leading scorer, Jaden Ledee, from a year ago. Lamont Butler was, such a good lead guard, especially on the defensive end of the floor, and then decision making, getting them into what they need to do. Without having seen a ton of those guys in new roles, how do you prepare for San Diego State based on on past recollections of playing against them and watching them? What do you need to do to make sure you're successful?
Yeah, it's like this, I think, with most teams now early in the year, with how much turnover and how much change there is in college basketball. Obviously, they have, a group back. I think led Miles Bird hit a huge shot up here. He's obviously became, one of their main guys. So I think we have a good feel for kind of his personnel wise. Um, but then they do have some guys. BJ Davis has become a really, really good player, that they've developed internally there. And then they brought in a handful of transfers. McKinney we're probably the most familiar with from his years at USD. But Boyd played on a Final Four team at FAU. Coleman Jones is a big body that's versatile. So I think trying to take what those transfers have done at other places, watching their first couple games at San Diego State, and then I think the biggest thing is understanding like the culture of that program and how hard they're going to play, how hard they're going to rebound, and the way they're going to defend is not going to change regardless of who's in that uniform. So I think preparing our guys for that is really, really important. Again, especially the rebounding and their defense, because that's always legitimate and kind of the first things that come to mind with that group. But they've done a really, really good job down there. There's a reason they've had so much success, and they've built what I consider the modern day college basketball roster. They got Bird and Davis and Heidi that they've developed from within. They went out and got some older transfers to supplement those. They have a kid that they redshirted that looks, really good that they're starting now. So their development there, I've always thought is one of the best, around. And I think that you see that now with a group of guys that weren't major players day one that have all gotten better. They're older. And then you have to supplement that with old guys. And then they have two true freshmen. And they've kind of done, again, a lot like I talked about with ASU. Like that's modern day college basketball. You better have a couple guys you develop from within. You better have a couple freshmen, and you better have a few old transfers. And obviously, Coach Dutch and his group have done that.
Awesome, Brian. Appreciate the time. Best of luck down in San Diego, and look forward to catching up again real soon.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it, man.
Field of 68 Media Network continues on with the Bulldog broadcast. Here with assistant coach at San Diego State, one of the hardest workers on the West Coast, helps provide so much value to Coach Brian Dutcher's staff. Grateful for his time to join us, preview a little bit of this big matchup, San Diego State and Gonzaga at Viejas on Monday. Coach, thanks for joining. Appreciate the time. I know how busy you guys are right now.
Oh no! Thank you for having us. Thank you for having me. And yeah, we're excited. This is gonna be a great matchup on Monday night. A little bit of a contrast of styles in the programs. Gonzaga known for offense, San Diego State known for defense. Obviously, we were both pretty good on the other side of the ball too. So you have to be to win all the games we do. But it's we've had some unbelievable matchups throughout the years. Go back to Kawhi Leonard's sophomore year, 2010, 2011, kind of brought us on the national scene, if you will. Not that we weren't good before that, but that's kind of what solidified San Diego State as a national brand. And when we went up there and won up in Spokane, like last year, we went up there and got another win. And I know they're going to come back with so many returning guys and an unbelievable team looking for revenge on Monday night down in San Diego.
It's a fair comment to make that since that Kawhi Leonard team in 2010 that you mentioned, Gonzaga and the SDSU are the two best teams on the West Coast. Obviously, Arizona fans, UCLA fans are going to have their comments on that, especially UCLA because they've made a couple Final Fours. But just in regards to the consistency and the high level of league titles, NCAA tournament appearances, and you guys really bolstered that by making a Final Four 2 years ago, as well as back-to-back Sweet 16s. I can only imagine recruiting pitches to high school players, as well as in the transfer portal, which is so important now. That is one of your number one topics. Am I right?
Absolutely. You nailed it. I've always joked with you can sit in these shoes if you want, but you're too smart for that. But we talk about all the times with recruiting, Gonzaga and San Diego State. We like to say we're the Gonzaga of the West Coast Conference towards the Mountain West Conference. We have 16 titles. The next one is 9. We kind of fashion ourselves that we are the two premier brands of West Coast basketball, especially when in terms of following and the support we get, especially in a home environment. There's not, I mean, you can throw Arizona in there, absolutely, like you mentioned, but when it comes to home environment, I mean, the Kennel Viejas Arena is just special, and I can't wait for Monday night. This place is going to be rocking.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to call Gonzaga regional games, and then with my CBS Sports Network obligations, I get down to the AHOS SDSU a couple times a year. And I have said this for years now. On the West Coast, those are the two best atmospheres. Students are in town. I can only imagine it's been sold out since the game was announced. What is that environment going to be like, and how do you prepare your team maybe to control those emotions early in a game because you don't have the experience that maybe your team last year had?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's part of, learning our team, seeing how guys, going to react in this environment. We don't know, Dan. You don't know. We had so many teams in the past, we've been one of the top teams with Gonzaga in terms of retainment, in terms of having everybody back. It's a new era now with NIL and the portal and everything. But Gonzaga, they know how their guys are going to react in so many different, situations because they've had it. They've been with that group before. The last time we had a group like that, we played on a Monday night in April. We played in the last game, and so we don't know, and it's going to be fun to see how our guys react in that environment. I know they're going to be excited. You almost want to temper their excitement almost a little bit in terms of being too hyped up, not moving too fast, not taking a deep breath. But yeah, we're excited to kind of see what this group's going to be like in that environment, and we know it's going to be rocking. I mean, there's no question. I mean, this thing is going to feel like the roof's going to blow off, and so we just got to, weather the storms. And they're going to go on a run. Gonzaga is one of the best teams on going on a quick 8-0 run, but how can you take a deep breath and settle back in? They score quick. With a point guard like Nembhard, if you add the USC exhibition, scrimmage, whatever you want to call that, I mean, he has 30 assists and 2 turnovers. I mean, you being an NBA point guard, I mean, that is absurd. 30 assists and 2 turnovers for anybody at any level in the rec center. If you were still playing
the rec center, that's a great one.
Unbelievable. So yeah, obviously he's the head of the snake, if you will, and he does an unbelievable job getting everybody else, great shots, good looks, whether it's the post, easy baskets, or the shooters. So, we got our hands full, but we're really ready for that matchup.
Well, you talk about the importance of Nembhard. You guys were last year were one of the most experienced teams in college basketball, and a lot of that was Lamont Butler, kind of being the guy. He's not necessarily a true point guard. He's not necessarily a true two, but he had that experience that you guys could rely upon. Then you had Darion Trammell that you guys could rely upon with his experience, and Jaden Ledee, your leading scorer and rebounder a season ago. You guys have a talented squad. And when I look at the numbers early and I watched a little bit of that UC San Diego game, you're a little bit more perimeter oriented in the past than you have been. Break down kind of your roster quickly if you can, and share us a little insight as how you're trying to play this season.
Again, it's so early. We're every team thinks they're going to play a certain way, and you go in trying to when you have a new team like we have 8 new guys, and really we have. Coming in this year, we have 2 guys that we've relied on to win games, which was Reese Waters, who's now hurt, and Miles Bird. And so we had Miles Heide get some minutes last year. But other than that, in terms of guys that we've had that have actually had minutes for us, there's not a lot of returning. So you kind of guess almost, or not, it's an educated guess on how you want to play. This year, with who we have, with Nick Boyd at the point guard. Again, he was the guy that was guarding Lamont Butler when he hit the shot, and Nick's had unbelievable success at Florida Atlantic. He's going to be great for us. And then you move, like I said, Miles Bird, and whether it's Wayne McKinney, BJ Davis on the wings. I mean, it's. I don't want to say that we're more guard kind of heavy or reliant. It's more of our bigs just haven't really had the experience to do it. 3 out of our 4 bigs haven't played heavy minutes. Jared Coleman Jones, a transfer from Middle Tennessee, he's played a lot of minutes, but he hasn't played a lot of minutes for San Diego State. So he's still trying to fit in where his role is, but he's super skilled. He can do a lot of things. Now we have Magoon Gwath at the 4, who you watch the UC San Diego game. He was cramping up. He didn't play as many minutes as he probably would have. He's just getting his feet ready. I mean, he has so much potential and so much upside. And you played with guys at Gonzaga that were like this, and at Washington, when you like the young guys that have all this potential, it's hard for them to get this success right away because there's a reason it's called potential. And he's just kind of getting his feet under him, but he's incredibly talented on both ends of the floor. Incredible shot blocker is where his number one worth for us is. And then obviously his ability to score from the outside and inside at 7 feet tall it's special. So there's a lot of guys, and we have a lot of young guys that we're going to be relying on. But you're right. I mean, it's different. It's a new San Diego State team. But at the end of the day, you're going to look at San Diego State and be like, wow, those guys really guard, because that's what our program is built on.
Yeah, I was just going to get to the next question is, as you were kind of describing some of the growth pains of some players and then, adjusting to new roles, the one constant in the SDSU program is you're going to defend and you're going to rebound, and those are non-negotiables. How does that begin with the recruiting process, whether it's high school or portal, and then how does that begin through your workouts and in the first official day of practice, although that day can be debated with all the new NCAA rules with regulations and workouts.
Yeah, I hear you on all that stuff. But the number one thing is it starts from recruiting. You have to tell them, if you don't guard here, you're not going to play. And it's just it starts right there. If you want to come to San Diego State, you got to want to defend. You got to love that side of the ball. And then offensively, Coach Dutch is going to let you flow and play. He's not going to get in the way of your game. He's going to try to put you in the best positions possible to be successful on offense. But on defense, it's pretty black and white. It's clear as day. Were you in the right spot? Were you not? Did your guy get by you? Did he not? Did you help? Did you not? It's very simple. But it starts in the recruiting process when we talk to these guys, whether it's the portal or in high school. And then, the other thing for us is this is the first time ever we did defense in the summer. And it's like, really? It's what I talked about. Yeah, it's the first time. In the past, you don't ever do defense in the summer. You have all these guys coming back. I think they're going to get tired of my voice, all the other coaches' voice by the time, November, December comes around. This year's team, so many new pieces, so many guys, even a Miles Bird. Miles Bird didn't, he got his redshirt year back his freshman year. So he's only been 1 year really in the program. Reese Waters was only 1 year in the program. So nobody's been more than 1 year in the program playing for us. So even those guys still weren't at like what you would say like a veteran level, like you mentioned Lamont Butler. Guys that have been here for years and years. Before that, it was Nathan Mensah and Adam Seiko and George. There's just guys that could just go on and on and on of 4 or 5 year guys in our program. A lot like Gonzaga has this year, guys that have been there for a while, know what Coach Few wants, knows what the staff wants, and they know how to execute it. And so when you have a familiarity with your staff and what they expect of you, it's different than what we're going through right now. And that's why we had to do things different starting way back in July. We started practice, I think it was July 8th was our first practice together. Mm-hmm. And this is now going to be our second real Division I game. Because on Monday night. So in November 18th, I mean, it's just crazy how these new rules and everything, are going on. But it's exciting times. I mean, we're excited to see what our guys are going to be like.
Well, the last question I've got for you before, excuse me, I let you go because I know your time commitments are heavy right now. Conference realignment happening like crazy. Gonzaga, SDSU moving into the revamped pack, whatever it ends up being the number. I think when you just look at the basketball side of things, take football out, just the basketball numbers, yourself, Gonzaga, Colorado State, Utah State, Washington State was really high in the net in KenPom last year. This has a chance to quietly become one of the best basketball conferences in the country. When you just look at the 7 of 8 teams that are committed as of now were in the NCAA tournament a season ago.
Yeah, we're excited.
6 of the 8, sorry.
Yeah, we're excited. I mean, that's going to be an unbelievable conference for basketball. And you forgot to mention your boy, Coach Leon Rice.
If he checks us out, he's going to get mad at me.
It's been an absolute thorn in our side. And,
yeah,
that's an elite basketball conference with elite coaches. A lot of tradition, guys that go to the NBA, multiple NBA players, and a lot of the teams you mentioned. You add Washington State, Oregon State. I mean, this is whatever it ends up being. This is an amazing basketball conference that can compete with anybody in the country. You've seen it throughout the years on how many NCAA bids those teams that you had just mentioned, how many times they've gone. And it's really exciting for us because it moves us into more of a national brand. So again, whatever it happens to be, no matter what, we're going to sit in couches, we're going to be in the portal, and you're coming to play in the Pac-12. Now, whatever teams are in it is whatever teams are in it. We just know it's an elite basketball conference. And to us, selfishly, that's all that matters, and we kind of let the chips fall where they will, where they may. But at the end of the day, when you go to recruit and you talk about the teams you mentioned, it's a great, who wouldn't want to play in that type of league, and it will be a brand that will be on every single night. Every league game will be on TV. It'll be awesome. Well,
Coach, I appreciate the time. I look forward to seeing you guys at Shoot Around on Monday. I'll be on the call for CBS Sports Network. And again, there's two unbelievable atmospheres, environments on the West Coast. That's McCarthy and Viejas, and I can't wait to see it in this matchup. So thanks again for joining.
Look forward to you joining us. Just don't give Coach Few all our secrets, whatever we might have when you come to the shoot around on Monday.
Trust me, I won't do that. You know that for sure.
Of course. Always, brother.
All right. Best of luck on Monday. Best of luck as the season continues. And we'll be seeing a lot of each other with this revamped Pac-12 in the next few years.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.